Syria has been under constant attack almost for the last few weeks in particular. Damascus has been attacked on numerous occasions in and around the airport and other areas. That's by Israel. In the east, a number of American bases that are there with American personnel for the sole purpose of stealing Syrian oil, which they're doing on a daily basis. I'm told that a couple of days ago, on one day, at least 80 very large oil tankers of American origin were seen taking oil out of East Syria to Iraq, where it's loaded off and sold off. So this is really happening. In the meantime, Syria is being attacked. But on the other side of the scales, Syria is now making peace with Saudi Arabia, making peace with Turkey. It looks like a lot of the warring and the fractionism is going to come to an end, despite the best efforts of the United States and Israel. There seems to be rapprochement and more likelihood of peace coming in the Middle East. These attacks on Syria by Israel in particular seem to have increased since this new radical Zionist government have come into power. We're going to have a look at a couple of very short videos of those attacks in Damascus the other day, and we will come back to you. Now, if you spoke to some of the international organizations, particularly the UN, you'd expect them to condemn attacks by Israel on a sovereign country like Syria and onto a city like Damascus, especially attacks that can kill civilians. That's not happening. In fact, the UN spokesperson for the Secretary General of the UN says that there aren't any American troops in Syria. Let's have a look at this video.
Do you think the presence of the US military in Syria is illegal or not?
That's not an issue that we're dealing with at this stage. There's been a war.
But is that because it sounds very familiar. This week we talk a lot about the UN Charter, the international law, and relative resolutions. But it sounds to me a foreign military based presence in another country without invitation sounds like something else to me. You know.
I'll leave your analysis to you. There's at this stage.
What's the difference between Syria, the situation in Syria, and the situation in Ukraine?
There's no U.S. armed forces inside of Syria, and so I don't have a. It's not a parallel situation.
You're sure there's no U.S. military personnel?
I believe there's military activity.
Yeah.
But in terms of a ground presence in Syria, I'm not aware of that.
Okay, 5 U.S. service members were injured in that attack. If there were no U.S. service members in Syria, how could they got injured? That's weird, right? Should I ask you about that?
That was the spokesperson for the Secretary General of the UN, Farhan Haq, and he seems to think there's no U.S. troops in Syria. Well, even CNN admits that there's plenty of U.S. troops in Syria and that they're there for the oil, but they don't say that bit. But they do admit it, no problem, when it comes to the attacks that I mentioned earlier. Let's have a look at this headline for a start. Now, this is a headline from CNN Politics. 6 U.S. troops diagnosed with traumatic brain injuries following Iran-backed attacks in Syria. So what was that? 6 U.S. troops? But I thought, according to the UN Secretary General spokesperson, so that's the UN Secretary General, he speaks for him, I thought there was no US troops in Syria. Let's read this. 6 US service members have been diagnosed with traumatic brain injuries as a result of attacks from Iran-backed groups in Syria last week. 4 US troops at the coalition base near Hasaka that was attacked on March 23rd by a suspected Iranian drone, and 2 service members at mission support site Green Village attacked on March 24th have been identified as having brain injuries in screening since the attacks, Pentagon spokesperson Brigadier General Patrick Ryder said on Thursday. As a standard procedure, all personnel in the vicinity of a blast are screened for traumatic brain injuries, he said. So those additional injuries were identified during post-attack medical screenings. One of the service members have been transferred to Baghdad for further treatment. This is where they shipped the oil over to Iraq. A US defense official familiar with the matter told CNN, noting that Baghdad has more advanced treatment options and better specialists in remaining on base in Syria. So I'm just putting this story up in general to point out that the US has troops in Syria, and they're there for the sole purpose of stealing Syrian oil, the oil from the people of Syria that have been sanctioned for so many years, that are really, really struggling, and the United States is blatantly stealing its oil. Nothing more than gangsters. What's your take on that, Porter?
There's no doubt about it that they're in the country. No doubt about it that the UN is very uncomfortable about admitting it, that they don't know what the party line should be on that and how they should respond to such a question, when really the truth is apparent there, that there is no denying that they have a presence there. So you can't really believe much that they say, and like you often wonder how is there actually going to be change in how they conduct their international affairs. Is it going to come domestically? Well, they have many ways of dealing with domestic threats as well, like, so it's quite difficult to see how you straighten out their whole look at the outside world. It seems that they're basically just imperialists. They go all over the world and take what they want.
On Sunday, the 10th of April, we're going to be interviewing Vanessa Beeley, who is embedded in Damascus. She's an English journalist, English origin journalist. I've interviewed her before. She's well known around the world. She is of her own mind. She stands up to the United States. I think there's certain elements of the US government hate her for her truths and her honesty. And we'll be talking to her on the 10th of April, which is on a Sunday. So tune in for that, where we're going to get the lowdown on what's happening from Damascus.